Hi, I'm Mona, and today I want to help you with a type of English that can feel very different from classroom English. I'm going to talk about business English and how native speakers use English at common workplaces. Maybe you can speak English in simple daily situations. You can order coffee. You can talk about your weekend. You can introduce yourself. You can understand many videos. But at work, something changes. People speak faster. They use short phrases. They do not always explain everything slowly. They say things like, "Can you look into this?" Or "Let's touch base later," or "I'll keep you posted." Everyone seems to understand immediately, but you are still trying to catch the meaning. Then someone asks you a question in a meeting. "What's your take on this?" You understand that they want your opinion, but the phrase feels unfamiliar. Your answer comes late. You smile, nod, and say something short. After the meeting, you think, "I knew what I wanted to say. Why could I not say it at work?" This happens to many English learners. Workplace English is not only about grammar, it is about phrases, tone, timing, and confidence. Native speakers often use common workplace phrases every day. These phrases are not always difficult, but they are natural. They help people ask for updates, share opinions, explain delays, disagree politely, and keep work moving. A learner named Daniel had this problem. He worked in an office where everyone was friendly, but their English felt quick and indirect. His coworkers did not always say, "Please tell me the progress of this project." They said, "Any updates on this?" They did not always say, "I will contact you later with more information." They said, "I'll get back to you." They did not always say, "Let us discuss this again later." They said, "Let's circle back." Daniel understood some of these phrases, but he did not use them. His English was correct, but it sounded stiff. He wanted to sound more natural, more professional, and less nervous. The good news is simple. You do not need perfect English to speak well at work. You need useful workplace phrases, clear examples, and the confidence to use them in the right situation. Today, you will learn how native speakers speak English at work through common workplace English phrases. You will hear what the phrases mean, when to use them, how they sound in real situations, and what you can say when someone uses them with you. Let's begin with the phrases that help you start conversations at work. At work, the first few seconds of a conversation matter. You may need to ask a question, interrupt someone politely, or start a discussion without sounding too direct. Native speakers often use soft opening phrases. These phrases make your English sound professional and respectful. One very common phrase is, "Do you have a minute?" Use this when you want to speak to someone briefly. For example, Daniel needs to ask his manager a quick question. He could say, "Do you have a minute? I have a quick question about the report." This sounds much better than walking up and immediately saying, "I need to ask you something." The phrase gives the other person a chance to say yes or ask you to come back later. If someone says, "Do you have a minute?" you can answer, "Sure, what's up?" Or more professionally, "Yes, of course, what do you need?" Another useful phrase is, "Can I ask you something?" This phrase is simple, but it is very natural. Use it before a question, especially if you are not sure whether the person is busy. For example, "Can I ask you something about the client email?" If the person is available, they may say, "Sure." "Of course." "Yes, go ahead." At work, native speakers also say, "Quick question." This means, "I have a small question." For example, quick question, are we still meeting at 3? This phrase is common in offices, messages, online chats, and meetings. It sounds casual but still professional. Another phrase you will hear often is, I wanted to check with you. Use this when you need confirmation, permission, or information. For example, I wanted to check with you before I send the final version. This sounds careful. It shows that you are not acting without confirmation. Daniel started using this phrase because it helped him sound responsible. Instead of saying, should I send this? He said, I wanted to check with you before I send this to the client. That sentence sounded much more professional. Another common phrase is now a good time? Use this when you respect the other person's schedule. For example, is now a good time to talk about the schedule? If someone says this to you, you can answer, yes, now it is fine. Or, can we talk in 10 minutes? These opening phrases are small, but they make a big difference. They help you enter a work conversation politely. Use them when you need someone's attention, when you have a question, or when you want to avoid sounding too sudden. At work, natural English is not only about what you say, it is also about how gently you begin. Updates are a big part of workplace English. People need to know what is finished, what is still in progress, what is delayed, and what needs attention. Native speakers often ask for updates with short, natural phrases. One of the most common phrases is, any updates on this? This means, do you have new information about this? For example, any updates on the client proposal? This phrase is common in emails, messages, meetings, and quick office conversations. If someone asks you this, you can reply, yes, I finished the first draft, or not yet, I'm still waiting for the client to respond. A slightly more polite version is, do you have any updates on this? For example, do you have any updates on the payment issue? This sounds more complete and professional. Another common phrase is, where are we with this? This means, what is the current situation? For example, where are we with the new website design? This phrase is very natural in meetings. It does not mean, where are we physically? It means, what is the progress? You can answer, we are almost done. We are still waiting for approval. We have finished the first part, but the second part needs more work. Native speakers also say, how's it coming along? This means, how is the progress? For example, how's the presentation coming along? You can answer, it's coming along well, I just need to add the final slide. Or, it's taking longer than expected, but I should finish it today. Another very useful phrase is, can you give me a quick status update? This is more formal. Use it when you want a clear progress report. For example, can you give me a quick status update on the hiring process? A natural answer could be, sure, we interviewed 2 candidates yesterday, and we have 1 more interview tomorrow. Daniel used to answer update questions with only 1 or 2 words. If someone asked, any updates? He would say, almost. That was not wrong, but it was not enough. So he learned to answer updates with 3 parts: the status, the problem, the next step. For example, we finished the first draft. We are still waiting for the pricing details. I'll send the final version once I receive them. That sounds clear and professional. At work, people do not need perfect grammar. They need clear information. When someone asks for an update, give them the current situation and the next step. That is how native speakers keep work moving. Now let's talk about giving updates. Many learners understand update questions, but they do not know how to answer naturally. They either say too little or they explain too much. A good workplace update is clear, short, and organized. One useful phrase is, "Here's where we are." Use this before giving the current status. For example, "Here's where we are, the design is finished, the content is almost ready, and we are waiting for approval." This phrase sounds confident. It tells the listener that you are about to explain the situation. Another common phrase is, "We're on track." This means everything is going according to the plan. For example, "We're on track to finish by Friday." If a native speaker says, "Are we still on track?" they are asking if the project is still moving as planned. You can answer, "Yes, we're still on track," or "We're mostly on track, but we may need one extra day." A very important phrase is, "We're running behind." This means we are late or the work is not moving fast enough. For example, "We're running behind because the client changed the requirements." This phrase sounds natural and professional. It is better than saying, "We are very late," which can sound too heavy. Another phrase is, "I'm still working on it." Use this when the task is not finished yet. For example, "I'm still working on the report. I should have it ready by tomorrow morning." This phrase is honest and useful, but do not stop there. Add a time or next step so the person feels informed. A stronger update phrase is, "I should have it ready by." For example, "I should have it ready by the end of the day." "I should have it ready by tomorrow afternoon." "I should have it ready by Monday morning." This phrase is useful because it gives a clear expectation. Another workplace phrase is, "I'll keep you posted." This means I will update you when I have more information. For example, "I'm waiting for the manager's approval. I'll keep you posted." If someone says this to you, you can answer, "Sounds good, thank you." Daniel started using this phrase often. Before, when he did not have an answer, he only said, "I don't know." That ended the conversation badly. Later he said, "I'm not sure yet, but I'll check and keep you posted." That sounded responsible. Good workplace English is not about always having the answer. Sometimes professional English means knowing how to say, "I do not know yet, but I will find out." That is a very important skill. At work, you will not understand everything the first time. That is normal. Maybe someone explains a task quickly. Maybe a meeting has too many details. Maybe a coworker uses a phrase you do not know. In these moments, you need clarification phrases. A strong workplace phrase is, "Could you clarify that?" This means, "Can you explain that more clearly?" For example, "Could you clarify what you mean by final version?" This sounds professional. It is better than saying, "I don't understand." Another very common phrase is, "I'm not sure I follow." This means, "I do not fully understand." For example, "I'm not sure I follow. Are you saying we should contact the client today or tomorrow?" This phrase is polite and natural. It tells the other person you need more explanation. Native speakers also say, "Can you walk me through it?" This means, "Can you explain it step by step?" For example, "I have not used this software before. Can you walk me through it?" This phrase is very common in training, office work, technical tasks, and new job situations. Another useful phrase is, "Just to be clear." Use this when you want to confirm information. For example, "Just to be clear, you want the report by Friday morning, right?" This phrase helps you avoid mistakes. It shows that you are careful. Another professional phrase is, "So just to confirm." For example, "So just to confirm, I should send the invoice to Sarah, not Mark." This is excellent for emails and meetings. If someone explains something too quickly, you can say, "Could you say that one more time?" This is polite and simple. Daniel used to feel embarrassed asking for clarification. He thought it made him look weak, but later he noticed something important. Native speakers ask for clarification all the time. They say, "Sorry, what do you mean? Can you explain that again?" Just to be clear. Let me make sure I understand. Clear work depends on clear communication. If you pretend to understand, you may make mistakes. If you ask one clear question, you can save time, reduce confusion, and sound more professional. Clarification is not a weakness. At work, clarification is a responsibility. Meetings can be difficult because you may understand the topic, but not know how to enter the conversation. Native speakers often use short opinion phrases to begin. These phrases give them time and structure. Common phrase is, "the way I see it." This means, "in my opinion." For example, "the way I see it, we need more time before we launch." This phrase sounds calm and thoughtful. Another useful phrase is, "from my perspective." This means, "from the way I see the situation." For example, "from my perspective, the main issue is communication." This phrase sounds professional and is useful in meetings. Native speakers also say, "I'd say." This is a softer way to give an opinion. And for example, "I'd say the second option is more realistic." The phrase "I'd say" sounds natural because it does not feel too aggressive. It gives an opinion without sounding like you are forcing it. Another phrase is, "my concern is." Use this when you want to mention a problem carefully. For example, "My concern is that we do not have enough time to test everything." This phrase is very useful because it sounds serious but respectful. Another excellent meeting phrase is, "one thing to consider is." For example, "one thing to consider is how this change will affect the customer." This phrase helps you add a point without sounding like you are attacking anyone. Daniel learned to use this phrase because he often had ideas but did not know how to begin. Instead of waiting silently, he started saying, "one thing to consider is the deadline." That simple phrase helped him join the meeting. Native speakers also say, "I'd like to add something." Use this when you want to enter the conversation. For example, "I'd like to add something. I think we should contact the client before we decide." If someone says this, you can respond, "Sure, go ahead." Or, "Yes, please." Meetings are not only about advanced vocabulary, they are about having entry phrases. If you have a good phrase to begin with, your answer becomes easier. A useful meeting answer often has three parts: your phrase, your main idea, one reason. For example, "From my perspective, we should wait until Monday because the client has not approved the final version yet." That sounds clear, professional, and natural. At work, you need to agree and disagree in a professional way. If you always agree, people may think you have no opinion. If you disagree too directly, you may sound rude. Native speakers often use balanced phrases. To agree naturally, you can say, "That makes sense." For example, "That makes sense. We should review the numbers first." This is one of the most common phrases in workplace English. Another phrase is, "I'm on the same page." This means I agree or I understand and share the same view. For example, "I'm on the same page. Let's move forward with that plan." If someone asks, "Are we on the same page?" they mean, "Do we all understand and agree?" You can answer, "Yes, we're on the same page." Or, mostly, but I have one question. Another phrase is, I agree with that approach. This is more professional than only saying, I agree. For example, I agree with that approach. It gives us more time to prepare. For disagreement, a useful phrase is, I see your point, but, for example, I see your point, but I think we should check with the client first. This phrase shows respect before disagreement. Another polite disagreement phrase is, I have a slightly different view. For example, I have a slightly different view. I think the problem is the process, not the team. The word slightly makes the sentence softer. Another useful phrase is, I'm not sure that's the best option. For example, I'm not sure that's the best option. It may create more work for the team. This sounds professional because you are criticizing the idea, not the person. Daniel used to avoid disagreement. He did not want to sound rude, so he stayed quiet. But silence caused another problem. His ideas were invisible. When he learned polite disagreement phrases, he could speak without feeling aggressive. At work, disagreement should not feel like a fight. It should feel like careful thinking. You can disagree with respect. You can challenge an idea without attacking the person. You can say what you think and still sound professional. That is a key part of workplace English. Deadlines are everywhere at work. People need to know what is urgent, what can wait, and what needs attention first. Native speakers use many short phrases for this. A very common phrase is, what's the deadline? This means, when does this need to be finished? For example, what's the deadline for the final report? You can answer, it's due by Friday. Or, we need to finish it by the end of the day. Another useful phrase is, how urgent is this? This is very natural. Use it when someone gives you a task and you want to know the deadline. For example, sure, I can help with that. What's the deadline for this? A common answer is, by tomorrow morning if possible, by the end of the week, whenever you get a chance. Be careful with whenever you get a chance. It sounds relaxed, but it does not always mean never. It usually means the task is not urgent, but the person still wants it done. Another important phrase is, this is time sensitive. This means this needs attention quickly. For example, this is time sensitive, so we should reply today. Native speakers also say this is a high priority. This means the task is important. For example, this is a high priority because the client is waiting. Another useful phrase is, can we prioritize this? This means, can we do this first? For example, can we prioritize this today? It affects tomorrow's meeting. If you are too busy, you can say, I'm tied up right now. This means I am busy. For example, I'm tied up right now, but I can look at it after lunch. This phrase sounds more natural than saying, I am occupied at this moment. Another phrase is, I have a lot on my plate. This means I have many responsibilities right now. For example, I have a lot on my plate this week, but I can help for 30 minutes tomorrow. Daniel heard this phrase often and thought it was strange at first. A plate? What plate? Later he learned it is a common idiom at work. If someone says, I have a lot on my plate, you can reply, no problem, we can talk later. Or, I understand, let me know when you have time. Workplace English often uses short phrases to manage time, pressure, and priorities. When you learn them, you sound more natural and understand your coworkers faster. Problems happen at work. A file is missing. A client is unhappy, a task is late, a message was not sent, a meeting was forgotten. In these moments, English learners often feel nervous because they do not know how to explain the problem professionally. One useful phrase is, "There seems to be an issue with." This sounds softer than saying, "There is a big problem." For example, "There seems to be an issue with the payment system." This phrase is professional and careful. Another phrase is, "We ran into a problem." This means a problem happened while we were working. For example, we ran into a problem with the new software update. It sounds natural and not too dramatic. If you made a mistake, you can say, "That was my mistake." For example, "That was my mistake. I sent the old version by accident." This phrase is honest. It shows responsibility. Another useful phrase is, "I'll take care of it." This means I will handle the problem. For example, "That was my mistake. I'll take care of it right away." This sounds responsible and confident. Native speakers also say, "I'll look into it." This means I will investigate or check the problem. For example, "I'm not sure why the file is missing. I'll look into it." If someone says this to you, you can answer, "Thank you. Please keep me posted." A very useful delay phrase is, "It's taking longer than expected." This means it is slower than we thought. For example, "The report is taking longer than expected because we need more data." This phrase sounds professional because it explains a delay without sounding careless. Another strong phrase is, "We may need more time." For example, "We may need more time to test the new system." This is better than waiting until the last moment and saying the work is not finished. Daniel learned that good workplace English is not about hiding problems. It is about explaining problems early, clearly, and calmly. If something is wrong, use this structure, state the problem. Give the reason, say the next step. For example, "There seems to be an issue with the file. It is not opening on my computer. I'll ask IT to check it and keep you posted." That sounds clear, professional, and responsible. Following up is important at work. You may need to remind someone about an email, a task, a meeting, or a decision, but you do not want to sound rude or impatient. Native speakers use polite follow-up phrases. One common phrase is, "I just wanted to follow up on." For example, "I just wanted to follow up on the email I sent yesterday." This phrase is very common in workplace emails and messages. Another phrase is, "just checking in on." For example, "Just checking in on the invoice. Were you able to review it?" This sounds friendly and softer than, "Why have you not answered?" A more direct phrase is, "Were you able to look at this?" For example, "Were you able to look at the document I sent?" This phrase is polite because it gives the person space. It does not accuse them. Another useful phrase is, "When you get a chance." For example, "When you get a chance, could you review the file?" This sounds polite and not too urgent. If the matter is urgent, you can say, "When you have a moment today." For example, "When you have a moment today, could you send me the updated numbers?" This gives a time frame without sounding rude. Another professional phrase is, "I wanted to circle back on." This means I want to return to this topic. For example, "I wanted to circle back on our conversation from yesterday." Native speakers use circle back often in office English. Some people think it is overused, but it is still very common. If someone follows up with you and you are not ready, you can answer, "Thanks for checking in, I'm still working on it." Or, "Thanks for the reminder." I'll send it by the end of the day. Daniel used to feel nervous when someone followed up. He felt as if he had failed. Later, he understood that follow-ups are normal. At work, people follow up because everyone is busy. A follow-up is not always pressure. Sometimes it is just communication. Learn to follow up politely and you will sound much more professional. Workplace English is not only meetings, reports, and deadlines. Small talk matters too. Small talk helps people feel comfortable. It builds friendly relationships. It makes you seem more present and confident. A simple phrase is, "How's your day going?" This is very common. You can answer, "Pretty good, thanks. How about yours?" Or, "It's been busy but good." Another phrase is, "How was your weekend?" This is common on Mondays. You can answer, "It was good, I mostly relaxed." Or, "It was nice, I spent time with my family." A natural follow-up is, "That sounds nice." For example, person A, "I went hiking on Saturday." Person B, "That sounds nice. Where did you go?" This keeps the conversation moving. Another useful phrase is, "Any plans for the weekend?" This is common on Fridays. You can answer, "Nothing special. I might just rest." Or, "I'm planning to meet a friend." Native speakers also say, "Busy day." This is a short, casual question. For example, if someone looks tired, you can say, "Busy day." They may answer, "Yes, very busy," or "You have no idea." Another phrase is, "I know the feeling." Use this when someone shares a feeling you understand. For example, person A, "I have so many emails today." Person B, "I know the feeling." This phrase creates connection. Daniel used to avoid small talk because he thought it was not important, but he noticed that small talk made work feel easier. People became more relaxed around him. He did not need long conversations. He only needed a few natural phrases. Small talk does not need to be perfect. Ask simple questions. Give short answers. Show interest, that is enough. At work, English is not only about information, it is also about connection. Now you have many common workplace English phrases, but do not try to memorize all of them in one day. That will feel heavy. Instead, organize them by situation. For starting a conversation, remember, "Do you have a minute?" Quick question. "I wanted to check with you." For updates, remember, "Any updates on this?" "Here's where we are. I'll keep you posted." For clarification, remember, "Could you clarify that?" "I'm not sure I follow." Just to be clear. For meetings, remember, "The way I see it, my concern is." One thing to consider is, for deadlines, remember, "When do you need it?" This is time sensitive. "I have a lot on my plate." For problems, remember, "There seems to be an issue with." "I'll look into it." "It's taking longer than expected." For follow-ups, remember, "I just wanted to follow up on." Just checking in on. Were you able to look at this? For small talk, remember, "How's your day going?" "How was your weekend?" "I know the feeling." Here is the best way to practice. Choose one workplace situation. Pick 3 phrases, create a short conversation, say it out loud, record yourself once. Then use one phrase in real life, even if it is only in a message or comment. For example, choose the situation, asking for an update. Your 3 phrases are, "Any updates on this?" "Where are we with this?" "I'll keep you posted." Now create a simple conversation. A person A, "Any updates on the report?" Person B, "Yes, the first part is done and I'm working on the final section." Person A, "Great, please keep me posted." Person B, "Of course, I'll send it by the end of the day." This is simple, but it trains real workplace English. Daniel practiced like this for 10 minutes every day. He did not become perfect immediately, but he became more prepared. The phrases started to feel familiar. When someone used them at work, he understood faster. When he needed to speak, he had ready language. That is the goal. You do not want phrases to live only in your notebook. You want them to be ready in your mouth. Workplace English becomes easier when phrases connect to real situations. Many English learners feel smaller at work than they really are. They have ideas, but they stay quiet. They understand the problem, but they do not know how to explain it. They want to ask a question, but they are afraid of sounding unclear. They want to join the meeting, but the moment passes too quickly. If this is you, remember something important. Your English does not need to be perfect before your voice matters. You can start with useful phrases. You can ask for clarification. You can give a simple update. You can agree naturally. You can disagree respectfully. You can explain a problem calmly. You can follow up politely. You can make small talk. Each phrase gives you a little more confidence. Each sentence helps you become more present. Each conversation teaches your brain that business English is not a wall. It is a skill. Daniel slowly changed because he stopped waiting for perfect English. He started using the phrases he had. First, he asked, "Do you have a minute?" Then he learned to say, "I'll look into it." Later, he used "from my perspective." In a meeting, one day, when a coworker asked for an update, he answered clearly, "Here's where we are. The first draft is done, the client feedback is pending, and I'll keep you posted once we hear back." It was not a long answer. It was not complicated, but it was professional, clear, and natural. That was progress. You can build the same confidence step by step. Start with one phrase, use it until it feels easy, then add another. Do not try to sound like someone else. Focus on being clear, calm, and useful. Native speakers do not use magic. They use familiar phrases in familiar situations. You can learn those phrases too. Your voice belongs in the workplace. Your ideas belong in the conversation. Your English can grow into the role you want to have. So the next time you are at work and English feels fast, do not disappear. Take one breath. Choose one clear phrase. Begin. Step by step, workplace English will stop feeling like pressure. It will become a tool. And with that tool, you will speak with more confidence, more clarity, and more professional strength. If this lesson helped you today, please subscribe to Mona English Cafe and turn on the bell so you never miss your daily English dose. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like so I know you want more lessons like this, and leave a comment below telling me what English topic, real-life situation, or speaking struggle you want Mona to talk about next. Your idea could become the next video. Keep going, keep practicing, and remember, your English can grow step by step. See you in the next lesson.